Thank you for joining us for The Drive Back, the movie podcast where we imitate our favorite thing to do after a movie, which is to talk about it on the ride home. I'm Garrett, and of course I'm joined by my good friend and co-host Adrian.
Howdy.
And today we have another double feature for you. We thought we'd just do two in a row, because we love doing them so darn much. These are the episodes where Adrian and I each pick a movie, we review both of them, watch them both, and talk about them here with you. And today, yet again, have two movies that are incredibly different, from tone to atmosphere to even just, every conceivable way. But all that coming up and more on The Drive Back. All right, so yet again, two movies that are incredibly different. Let's just go ahead and we'll dive right in. What was So I know you picked the second movie we're going to talk about today, which is As Above, So Below. What was your process for picking that movie?
I really like this movie. I think it's criminally underrated. I think it's not perfect by any means, but it's gotten pretty panned by critics, and I think it's definitely kind of one of those hidden gems. It's a cool concept, relatively well executed as far as like kind of a horror thriller mystery movie kind of goes. So I just think it's a hidden gem for me. So I just really wanted to watch it and share it for anyone else that hasn't seen it and talk about it.
Gotcha. Yeah. And my pick is the first film we're going to be covering today, which is The Good, the Bad, the Weird, a Korean Western, which is very weird to say. But that's exactly the reason I picked it, because it's just so incredibly different from a lot of other films we get. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So the first film, as I said, is The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. Released in 2008, it was directed by Ji-woon Kim and stars Kang Ho-sung, Lee Byung-hun, and Jung Woo-sung. I hope I am saying those correctly. It's the story of two outlaws and a bounty hunter in 1930s Manchuria and their rivalry to possess a treasure map while being pursued by the Japanese army and Chinese bandits.
Yes.
So I guess since this is my film, I'll go over my general thoughts here. I think this movie's a lot of fun. I think it's just one of those movies where it's not made for the express purpose of trying to be, the next greatest thing to come out of South Korea. Obviously, that's what films like Parasite are for. But this is just a thoroughly enjoyable action movie with characters that are, I would say, very interesting and handled in a very unique way. But what did you think?
I thought this movie was okay. I think it did a lot right in terms of taking kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly Western and kind of upping the ante a little bit and adding some spice there. For me personally, some of the tropes of the movie that, while in the beginning were very funny, they got just a little tiresome for me. And that's just more of a personal thing. I just felt a little worn out by the end of it because it just kind of felt like the same over and over again. A couple of good twists, though, that I did not see coming, which was really fun, and a pretty satisfying ending. It definitely wraps it up in a nice little bow, which we'll talk about once we drop spoilers.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and drop spoilers for The Good,
Bam.
the Bad, the Weird. It is available to stream on Hulu, should you feel inclined to watch it after this review. Yeah, so I feel like a pretty lukewarm reception from you and a good reception from me.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk about. I want to address a couple of the things you had talked about as far as like the tropes that got tiring. What are those specifically?
I just think like the whole one, I didn't feel that the movie had really any sort of proper cadence to it, so it felt very abrupt when it would go from like really busy action, which also I want to just mention that the set design is very, very good for this movie.
Yes.
Really, really elaborate costuming and all that stuff is really great. To me, it almost came down to more of like this is such like a pretentious critic thing to say, but like the director, I felt didn't have his cadence down. So while like most movies that we're all used to, and maybe this is good, but most movies that we're used to have a certain amount of action and then a certain amount of downtime and then a certain amount, like they have breaks kind of intertwined. And this one felt very abrupt, like in the middle of a really big action scene, we would just cut to absolute silence. And it just felt really odd and it didn't really feel right. And then just kind of the slapstick humor to me. I mean, that's kind of a crude way to say it because it's not slapstick, but just kind of that like in your face dopey humor just got a little bit tiresome for me.
Sure, I can totally understand that. I mean, it is also um, it is a foreign film, and that can be very hit or miss with American audiences sometimes who aren't used to maybe a particular style of humor or a particular style of cadence in film. It's a very real thing that can happen. Um, but
It happened.
yeah, exactly. So I mean, I could see the point that it does kind of get tiring. That the I'll just call him the weird character. Because it's the good, the bad, and the weird. And the weird is kind of his antics do get a little tiring after a while. But I feel like it for me it's not as much as tiring as it just kind of like you just kind of get into the rhythm of it and it's not quirky anymore. Maybe.
Maybe that's what I mean by tiring. Is that like the movie just lost its it's so hard to say because movies that are especially comedies build right like they're supposed to get funnier and funnier and funnier and hopefully carry you throughout and this what I mean by tired is probably more in agreement with what you're saying is that I just stopped like I stopped really necessarily focusing in and enjoying that part of it.
Well, maybe because you're looking at it as more of a comedy and less as an action movie or a western.
No, I mean I definitely was watching it as a western, which it 100% is a western. I don't think there's anyone that could take that
Oh
away
yeah,
from
it
it.
is.
It's for sure a western through and through. It just maybe this is the case. If it's not a comedy, then I think they leaned too heavily on that. Um, and that is maybe where my cadence and circadian rhythm got confused because they were like focusing so heavily for so much on that, and then it wasn't that. So it just kind of it just felt odd to me. The whole movie did, to be honest, just like a little bit off. Like it was almost what it wanted to be, I think, but for me, it just didn't quite nail it.
Yeah, it's one of the I don't want to say complaints, but one of the critiques I have of this film, whereas like it takes a lot from other films, like a lot of
Sure.
obviously westerns and even popular films. There's a couple of moments that remind me of Tarantino in this movie, and
Indiana Jones feeling as
oh
well
yeah,
at
this
times.
this is a very Indiana Jones feeling film,
Yeah.
just without the supernatural stuff or anything like that. Um, and I don't think it really rises above what it takes, which is the important thing. If you're going to take something from another film or another medium, you want to try and rise above it and make it seem like your own, and it never really does. It comes off more as like an homage rather than like something that's trying to be
Yeah.
original.
Yeah, I'd agree with you. I think this whole movie kind of felt like I'd seen it before. Like it just felt like a conglomeration of so many different action, like comedy movies and all of that it kind of just felt mundane watching it to me. And maybe that's just a product of the time. I don't know. I think this came out in like 2009,
2008.
2008. So maybe at the time this was very fresh, but I feel that we've gotten a ton of stuff like this since then. So that to me it was just a little bit just kind of like, okay, here we go. Like here's this. I do want to talk about the twists though. That the movie did have some really interesting twists. Especially how they kind of introduce you to like the three main characters, the good, the bad, the weird. But then they introduce a lot of other parties throughout the movie, which gets really interesting. There's a whole like vying for power battle that's going on and who wants the map and all this stuff. And I thought that was really well done, but I really wanted to talk about the twist about the finger cutter.
Yes.
Did you see that coming? Because I didn't. I thought it was really well done.
I had seen this film before, but I
Oh,
had seen it
okay.
years ago, and I was watching it. Actually, I was on a Boy Scout trip, and the people I was in the car with had it, and we watched it on the screens, and we were watching it while we drove. And
Nice.
that's how I watched it. I didn't remember any of it, except that I remembered it was just a super fun movie. So I was like, yeah, I'll go ahead. Let's go ahead and do this one because I didn't really remember it, and so I didn't remember any of the twists, and I totally didn't see the finger chopper coming.
It was
towards the end.
awesome.
But they really set up the fact that the bad is because he tries to cut the finger off of
Oh, they play into it.
yeah, which was great. And
It was a great payoff. It really was.
but then you look at it now and you're like, oh, he was trying to mock, which is it's just so great, and a great final standoff too.
Well, that was just a straight paying homage. I mean, the whole like the right in the eyes and everything looking around. I mean,
Yeah.
they kind of made fun of it, which was nice. But I loved the fact too that it wasn't gold or anything; it was oil.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good little kind of just like a twist of like, oh, that's the most valuable thing.
And they don't know what the treasure is until after they've all shot each other,
Yeah.
which is
Which
great.
also a lot of bullets were flying
Yeah.
and a lot of arms were hit. Like I noticed just that no one really got like deadly injured until the last couple bullets. They just shot each other like 12 times each in the arms.
I think it's great. I think it's a lot
It
of
was
fun.
fun. Yeah, it was fun, but so I would like to preface this, which I have no issue with like native language movies that need to be dubbed or need to be subbed, I mean. Some of my favorite shows are like that. This one, I think I would have enjoyed it more in the future on a rewatch if I could just have it on in the background and kind of keep pace with it. So like maybe a dubbed version for my second watch because I feel like now that I know the plot, it could be just a fun put on in the background movie and have some cool stuff to look at, good visuals, a good story. And I feel like that might be fun. But it was very intensive. You do have to actively read throughout this entire film.
Well, which, yeah, I mean, you're going to be doing that with a lot of
Oh, I
foreign
use
westerns.
subtitles for everything anyway. So it's not really a negative. It's just that I think it would be nice to have that option because I did like the story. And I feel like it'd be nice if I could keep pace while doing other things
And
to me.
I feel like that's a very important thing to mention too, is that the story is original. Like the actual setup and the characters and the location, everything is very original. It's just it's more so when we say it's like taking things from other films, it's mostly visually and like I would say thematically as well.
Yeah,
but
it
like
kind
the
of wears
actual-
its stuff on its sleeve for sure.
exactly. And this movie knows what it is. And I think that is a strength of it. It knows that it's a Korean filmmaker
Yeah,
paying homage to his favorite American Western films or something, So,
Yeah.
and it totally works. I mean, I think at least. Again, it does get a little tired with this homage. But one other thing I want to point out, though, or two things that are very positive for me in this movie. First off, the action is great, especially because it's coming out of a non-American studio and a non-Hong Kong studio. It actually feels very different. I feel like there's a lot of interesting camera movement. In a lot of physical comedy, it's kind of reminiscent of like Jackie Chan.
yeah.
In a lot of moments, like when he swings the axe overhead and it gets stuck in the
On the door, up
beam,
above.
and he brings the thing down. Which the moments like that are great, but also the setting. I mean, this is like there are moments where you're like, oh, this is just a Western, but then you go to like the I think it's the ghost town or
the ghost market.
the ghost market. Thank you. And that film feels like something out of a fantasy movie or like a fantasy game. Like
Yeah.
in our D&D game, that's kind of how a couple of those markets would have looked like, And then at other points, it feels like a military movie, like when the Japanese army comes in and they're bombarding the heck out of them as they're running, which that's a great, awesome
Yeah.
scene. That kind of feels more like a military movie. So it's like a lot of things jumbled into one, and it never really loses its identity because it's kind of forging its own.
It kind of
But not really.
It kind of took everything and just like maybe I don't think it turned it up enough to be like, wow, it really made it its like own. It just like turned it up one notch for every idea that it took.
Yeah.
So it felt fresh. I don't want to say it felt stale. I don't like, I'm not raving about it because I just don't feel like raving about it. Like it was good. I just don't feel like I would run out and tell people like, you gotta go see this movie.
Yeah.
This would be one of those things like if you're dabbling, especially with that it's a foreign film, if you're kind of trying to venture out, this is a super Americanized kind of feeling movie to go jump into that.
It's a super
you could easily
easy
do
one to
it.
watch too.
Yeah.
Like, this is like among all the foreign films we've watched on this show,
Yeah.
it's probably one of the easier ones. I mean, even I know Seven Samurai is a lot of talking, so you think it'd be easier to keep up. I would say this is easier just because you're more familiar with the cadence of action and you can kind of keep up, and it's a somewhat you know normal, like, or not normal, but like a relatable story. But
It's pretty easy to follow while the story does jump around quite a bit. And kind of in the beginning, I found myself like, okay, wait, what? Like, why? Oh, we're over here now. Okay. But as the story goes, it definitely is very clear. Like, I never got super lost or anything.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, it was good. It was good. It just wasn't great. It's just another action movie to me at this point. Like
Yeah.
it was serviceable for sure. Just didn't blow my mind.
that's totally fair. I think again, we're not raving about it, but it is a good movie, and if you're you're trying to venture into foreign film, I think it is a good one that you could certainly do a lot worse than this one. But one of the things I want to talk about too, I want to get your kind of opinion on, is the performances in this movie. How do you feel like everyone was? Because I feel like everyone did like a good job of like hamming it up, but not really, and like kind of paying homage to those stereotype characters. But I do like I mean, even though he got a little tiring for you, I think the Weird was fantastic in his role.
Yeah, I think everyone did really well. Again, that's kind of where, to circle all the way back, I think it was more maybe the director and I just don't mesh as much as it could have happened.
Yeah.
Because I think everyone that delivered their lines did so excellently. Like, I believed every character. They all felt real. Or maybe I just don't like the Weird. Maybe that person just gets tiring to me in real life. So I don't know. But yeah, I mean, everyone did really well. I have no complaints about any of the actors. I thought some of it was pretty creepy when it got like down to the nitty gritty of it, and some of it was really exciting. I mean, everyone acted the action and the dialogue parts really well.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't have anything else to really add, I feel like we can.
It's a good movie. I'd say this isn't the first action/western I would tell you to go watch. If you and I were going down that path of action westerns, this would be on the list. It would be, hey, this is a pretty good one, and I'm glad I've seen it. I feel like it's a great one that I have seen now.
Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest reasons we love doing these double features, is because it expands what you maybe would have seen or would not have seen.
Yeah.
So, but also just important to note too that this is a western, but it's not taking place in the 1800s. This takes place in, I think, the 1930s. 1930s, 1940s, 1930s, right around there.
Yeah, 1930s, I believe.
So it is taking place in that time period. It does when we say a western, it's western feeling. There's trains, there's horses, but there is also motorcycles and jeeps and the Japanese army with machine guns. So
that's kind of where it more feels like Indiana Jones, where there's like enough technology to like traverse quickly, and also like limited amounts of that technology.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's go ahead and jump right into scores and some final thoughts. I guess I shall go first since this was my pick. I think this is a super fun movie, an action film from South Korea. It looks fantastic and it has great performances, but I don't think it can quite rise above the movies that it's trying to pay homage to. But it's a great action film effort from South Korea, and so with that in mind, I gave it a 75.
I also gave it a 75.
Woo! Look at that.
Wow, that's so funny. And I was thinking I thought I was gonna be below. But no, I gave it a 75. I think it's good. I just don't think, like, I wouldn't text someone that I had seen this movie, or like I wouldn't be super ecstatic about it. Mm-hmm. It definitely is like above some of the Netflix originals we've gotten lately. So if you are looking for something to watch that's a little bit more, I guess, like high caliber, this is a great watch. It just doesn't. I just don't want to say it's going to blow your mind. It's just an okay watch. It's a fun movie. Just not fun enough for me personally to negate that score gap. So yeah, it's fun.
Fair. I mean, it's not one of those movies you're going to brag about, like you said, but it's one of those ones where like you're in a film circle discussion, right? And someone's like, "Have you ever seen that 2008, Korean action?" You're like, "The Good, the Bad, the Weird," and they're like, "Yeah," and you're like, "Yeah, I have." It's just one of those cool ones you can kind of bring up.
Exactly. Or it's totally one of those things. Whenever someone starts talking about Clint Eastwood, you can be like, "You know what I've seen," and and it doesn't star Clint Eastwood, but you could talk about it.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like you're playing one of those movie trivia games, and it's like movies with like cowboys in it, and or like westerns, and you can be like, "I need that winning one."
Yeah.
The Good, the Bad, the Weird.
It's also one that all your friends might be like, "You got that wrong. It's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly," and you get to be like,
Just hold up your phone. It's this one right here.
Boy, do I have a surprise for you. It's a South Korean Western.
They're like, what? But, all right, let's go ahead and move on to your pick, which is As Above, So Below. Released in 2014, it was directed by John Eric Dowdle and stars Perdita Weeks, Ben Feldman, and Edwin Hodge. When a team of explorers ventures into the catacombs that lie beneath the streets of Paris, they uncover the dark secret that lies within the city of the dead.
Ooh.
So why don't you go ahead and give your spoiler-free thoughts before we move on?
So I've seen this movie quite a few times before and throughout college, and then after college. I mean, I just kind of watched this movie here and there whenever I forget enough about it that I'm like, it's probably a fresh watch.
Mm-hmm.
I think it does a really good job. I'm fascinated with the catacombs. It's one of the things I really want to go take one of those like guided tours of. Not a tour that happens in this movie, but a tour of them is something I'd like to do. But I just think the whole idea that, well, without spoilers, I think the concept is really, really fascinating. I don't think it may have been executed as well as maybe it could be now, with maybe some more creative minds behind it, or maybe some more like big minds behind it. But I think it was an awesome foray into kind of the mystery of the catacombs and kind of tying it into more superstition and mythological components that I think it did okay. I think it did pretty well, and I think it's an underrated movie. You'll find if you look it up that it's pretty panned, kind of across the spectrum. But I think it's good. It's kind of one of those, like,
Guilty pleasure?
guilty pleasure. Yeah, one of those things that I think is good, even though everyone else says it's not. So I wanted Garrett to watch it because I don't think you'd seen it.
I had not seen the film, but I had seen Foundflix's ending explained because I was curious about it.
Yeah.
And then now I had to actually watch the entire film.
Yeah, and if you are listening to this and you haven't seen it, and you're looking up reviews right now while I'm talking about it, I suggest giving this movie a watch, just regardless of those reviews, because this is going to be one that you may like. There's a high chance of that, especially if you kind of like that found footage style of movie. And I think you should give it a shot. It's a fun one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is a very, very fantastic concept.
Yeah.
On paper, it is a very different concept. It takes a much more detailed level to its story than I think any horror movie I've seen over the last couple of years. I mean, with the exception of like The Conjurings. But I feel, and on the positive side, there are not that many jump scares in this movie, which is...
It's more creepy. It's
creepy.
more, yeah.
I mean, there's a couple which are really cheap, which we'll talk about, but I do feel like this really cool concept is wasted on an incredibly generic found footage movie that I feel that this movie, if there is a Snyder cut of this movie and it's not found footage, I'd be so excited to watch it. But
That's interesting.
I feel like a studio head had to step in and be like, hey, Paranormal Activity came out. Let's do this for, $100,000 plus actor salary and make a couple million. Right?
Yeah, I think it made like 20 million. Like, it wasn't a lot of money.
It wasn't a success by any means. No, it was a success, but it probably made back its budget 20-fold.
Oh, yeah.
But, it just doesn't feel like maybe it is the studio had enough faith in the concept to make it a full-fledged movie instead of just making it a found footage movie. So
yeah, and I think I completely agree. I feel, yeah, it might have been the studio, but I also think that as far as those found footage movies of, like, I guess we'll call it the Paranormal Activity era, when that first happened, this one definitely probably has the most thought behind it.
Oh, definitely.
Like, by far, if you're looking for a found footage movie with an actual story, this one at least thought about it. Like, it tries its best to make sense of this really elaborate concept, which we'll talk about after we drop spoilers.
Yeah. I mean, if you're looking for, like, a found footage movie that's, like, just all around fantastic, I'd probably recommend Cloverfield over this one, and I'd probably recommend Wreck over this one.
Different genres, though.
They are different genres,
yeah.
But it's more so the style of filming, I think, is more... Even, that's a lie. I was going to say Fourth Kind, but that's a little bit different because there's reenactments in it, too, so... But
yeah.
Anyhow, let's go ahead and drop spoilers. If you do want to watch As Above, So Below, it is available to stream on Netflix. I believe is the only thing it's on right now, but Netflix is the big one. So moving right along, let's go ahead and drop some spoilers. And this movie falls into... I want to address this kind of first. This movie falls into the same kind of category as Underwater, where it was a really cool concept, kind of like in a mediocre movie. You know what I mean?
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that.
But let's go ahead and address the elephant in the room, which is the concept of Dante's Inferno, the descent into hell,
Yeah.
and the appearance of alchemy and the Philosopher's Stone,
Yes.
which are all super fascinating concepts.
Yeah.
And
Incredibly.
I feel like it's handled in a way in this movie that it's just in the background and you don't really know about it until you dig in more, which is very nice. Like the big bullhead in the beginning of the movie that has the resting place of Nicholas Flamel
Yep.
is a very interesting idea. I mean, it's kind of weird that you're just like in Iran and then all of a sudden you're not. Like, there's no explanation for, why she's there at first. It's kind of weird, but
Well, to
it
me,
works.
the story it does happen in the background. All the different rings on the descent happen kind of passively. So if you're not aware of what's happening, it definitely is just like it's just in the background almost. I mean, they're main things, but it's not like talked about like we're at the first level.
No.
It almost reveals itself at the bottom. Like the movie kind of tells you like, oh, this is what's been happening. And to me, I like this movie too because it's kind of like a video game in where you could play through and then you can read about the lore if you want. This movie has a ton of layers to it that I think often on the first watch through go overlooked. I know you'd watched the breakdown already, but there's a ton of like every scene in this movie has some sort of symbolism to it or some sort of message that's going on for every character. And I think it was neat. I think it's a really neat concept.
Yeah, I think we both highly agree on that subject. It is a fascinating concept. Yet again, it's just my biggest gripes with this movie are the found footage, which I'm one of the people I usually defend found footage movies because I feel
Me
like
too.
they're trying to go for more of a realistic look at what someone like. Yeah, I'm gonna be recording everything, so we have this on footage. Like it's a real thing. People like we do that now all the darn time.
Yep.
Like this would exist with TikTok.
Yep.
Right? You're like, oh wow, we're in the catacombs. Wow, dab on him. Like all that cringy stuff. But
As you can tell, Garrett definitely watches TikTok.
I just see all the cringe and I refuse to go on. But I'm dated. I use YouTube. But like so again, it does get a little tiring at a point, and it really. And my other biggest gripe with this movie is that you can tell that they maybe had 2 sets in this movie that they just kept recycling.
Oh, that's
Just from
fascinating.
different
I didn't
angles.
get that. That's super interesting.
Yeah,
I will have to
everything-
watch it again because I did not notice that.
I mean, you enjoy watching this movie, so go right ahead.
Well, I know that. I mean, they definitely use the same sets because big spoiler, but the whole like reverse side of it just basically goes back through
Yeah.
the same sets in a different way, which I thought was neat too. I loved the idea that literally the whole set flips upside down, and they have to then go back up through all those places they just went down. I mean, I don't want to say it was. I really don't think it was horrifically executed. It could have been done better. And I would love to see a different take on it by, like I said, a bigger director now or somebody with more chops. But I don't think it's terrible. Like, I feel like it got totally overpanned by the media, and I think it deserves better. I really do.
I certainly don't think it's as bad as the critics said it was, but I don't think it's by any stretch of the imagination a good film. I think it's just right in the middle line.
Yeah, I think this
better
is
than it
better.
has any right to be.
Yeah, that's probably it. It's definitely one of those movies like if you're looking on Netflix and you see all those like 1,000 movies about possession that are on there now or like any of those, this is definitely going to stand out. One, it's got a really cool little logo on it. But I just think this one's worth a watch out of all those other generic ones. It's got something just that little bit more like spice to it than all those other movies.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna get the tropes in it. You're gonna get the dumb characters, except for the main character who is just like I don't subscribe to the Mary Sue stereotype. You know, when the woman has like all the power for no reason. Like when people say that Rey is just like powerful for the sake of being. No, she's not. They explain it in Rise of the Skywalker. But like this is the one situation where you're like, okay, she just like speaks every language. She has multiple degrees in every subject, and she's just like makes Indiana Jones look like a little kid. Like it's a little weird.
Well, and like everything she looks at, she's like, "Oh, that's from the like year 10 And you're like, how could you possibly know that and know everything about that culture and know everything about this language? And like,
And she hears the rumbling. She's like, "That's the Blue Line subway." How do you know that too?
she knows like exactly what the shake is on the Richter scale. She's like, that's a
She's like,
0.0024.
"That's a 2.2."
But yeah, exactly. I do think this movie does a pretty cool job. One of my big fears is like people being very still in dark places. I get that from the Blair Witch Project when like standing in the corner. So that stuff really freaks me out. And like, I think it's the quiet stuff that scares me more. Like I can handle the big jump scares and the big bangs, but like the people just walking by in the background or people just standing menacingly in a dark room and you don't know what's going to happen. That stuff wigs me out more because if I walk into a room and someone's flailing about with a machete, my brain knows, okay, I have to dodge and attack this person with a machete. Like I can process that.
Yeah.
If someone is just standing there, what is going to happen in this next moment? Like I have no idea in my head. So that is way more interesting to me. And this movie has a lot of that. Like a lot of very silent sets where you're not sure what the next step of the movie is going to be and you're not sure what's going to happen. And that's
like
really
that
fun.
Like the one cult leader woman that like walks by in the beginning and
By the club. Yeah.
Yeah, and you see her again inside and then she walks by. Yeah. Those moments are way creepier and I heartily enjoy those. So
yeah, I think the jump scares they tried to do I think they all miss in this movie. I don't think anything's really gonna whoa. Again, this movie, my recommendation of this movie solely comes based off of it's the only recent iteration of this concept that at least has some chops to it. The acting isn't that great.
No, but that's not why you watch the movie. You watch it to be creeped out. So
yeah,
but I mean, kind of on that, like, I'm going to be really upset if this is the last iteration of the Dante's Inferno type story.
Yeah.
I am still holding out hope that we're going to get a film adaptation of the EA game Dante's Inferno, which would be fantastic. There is an animated one on Amazon Prime that is amazing. I love that one.
I'll have to check it out. I haven't watched it.
It's kind of like the Animatrix style, where several different studios worked on the chapters of it. And it's really good. But I would love to see something more set in like that game takes place in the Crusades and having a Crusader go back and lose his love and he has to go and get her. That's fantastic. Man, I would love to see that. So, but like this, like I get kind of angry at the kind of like this is just wasted on a horror movie. Like it should have been something better. But
I can agree. I mean, again, I'm not defending this movie as like it's untouchable as a horror film. Like by no means. This movie has so many things wrong with it. And that's one of those things, again, why I'm recommending it is because this is one of those movies that despite all of the very blatant missteps that it takes, I still like it. Like it's it's an okay to bad movie and I still enjoy it. And I think those are pretty rare. I feel like usually when a movie takes this many missteps, you're like, oh, that was really terrible. This one has that thing that keeps you interested, and it's the plot. It's just an interesting plot.
Yeah, definitely. It kept me interested, and I don't find movies like this usually good at all. And so, like, if it was able to keep me interested, it gets some credit for that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I enjoy it. I have, and I will. I mean, it's a fun one for me.
Yeah, sounds like a good final thought. What anything else you want to add before you score it?
No, I gave this movie a 72. Okay. I think this movie as a horror movie is like if it had a letter grade, C is what comes to mind. Like it's better than the student that didn't do any work and submitted paper. This person at least like read the book, maybe like the first couple chapters. So it's got like some chops to it. But it's by no means going to blow your socks off. If it does, that's awesome. But this is one of those movies that whenever I talk movies, horror movies specifically with friends, it kind of comes up as just one of those fun movies that we've all seen. And I can't recommend it enough just based off that. It's just cool. And I don't have anything else to say about it. It's just cool.
Fair enough. Again, I think the concept is really cool. The idea of mixing alchemy and Dante's Inferno into like this one story is very interesting, and it sets up these plots or this storyline in a way that like you do have to dig a little bit deeper if you want to know more about it. And I would highly recommend Foundflix's video on it, the ending explained. Just his channel in general is great, and it's a very good way of kind of understanding everything that's going on with it. That said, again, it's a really good idea and some decent directing and some good writing in a movie that's just not good. And so it's this kind of hybrid mix. I ended up giving it a 49, which I feel like is... No, it's not bad. And I think it is... And a lot of people think, oh, 49, that's a failure. No, it's not. There's no letter grades with this.
Yeah.
If it had to get a letter grade, it'd be like a D+, C-. Like, that's where it would lie. And it's mostly because of the concept and the some of the technical execution on like creating the world of it. I mean, I do wish it would have used the catacombs a little bit more.
Yeah,
we don't really see that many of the catacombs, but
you do get to see that whole little cult thing going on in the beginning, though, which is really neat. That there's people that meet in the catacombs.
Oh yeah, I'm sure that happens in real life.
Oh yeah, it does have a lot of interesting stuff like that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but that's going to bring us to an end for this double feature. Adrian, if our wonderful guests who are listening to this podcast right now, if they haven't followed us or know where we are online, where can they do so?
You can do it pretty much anywhere at The Drive Back. We are pretty much on everything at that handle. You can find us on Instagram. That's where we like to talk to all of our followers. We get some fun comments on there and some fun suggestions as well. Mm-hmm. And then YouTube, where you're watching us now, if you can see our beautiful faces. We can't see yours, unfortunately. But we do post exclusive content specifically on here for movies that are current. So anything that is like streaming or in the theaters, we release a no spoiler and a spoiler version of the video. So you can go ahead and like watch the spoiler free one, decide if you want to see it, go see it, and then come back and talk spoilers with us. So we kind of give you the best of both worlds there. But those are only here. You can't find those on the podcast if that's where you're listening to us. You can't find those on Spotify or any of the other ones, Apple Podcasts or anything. But give us a follow, give us a subscribe, give us a like. Make sure to hit the bell so you get notified the next time we review one of your favorite movies.
Yeah, and I mean, look forward. We should be doing some more YouTube reviews. It's kind of been a little slow at the moment. I don't think we haven't really done a YouTube film review since Mortal Kombat. But at the time of recording, Cruella comes out this weekend, so that might be something that we do a review on, maybe.
Quiet Place 2 as well.
Quiet Place 2 does come out. I do have to rewatch the first one before I see the second one. But I think also next weekend is something else that's big. I can't remember. I think Conjuring is next weekend. I
think you're right.
Yeah, so we'll definitely we have to do that one because we did the rest of them.
Yep.
So look out for those. And then again, as Adrian said, if we don't do a YouTube specific review, if it's something that I just watch or Adrian just watches, we do post stories on our Instagram that are short reviews of those films. So yeah, that's going to bring us to an end of the episode. Thank you for watching or listening. We love you so much, and we'll catch you next time on The Drive Back. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Drive Back. Make sure to be on the lookout for new episodes every Monday, and make sure to follow us on social media.